All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in session in People versus Robert Durst. All jurors and alternates have returned. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin. We have all of the Council for the People are present with Mr. Henderson at council table. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple calendar issues are things for you to note. On June 14th, we're going to have a longer lunch break. Okay, so that's we're going to on that day we're going to return from lunch at 2 p.m. So there's a long lunch on Monday, June 14th. The second day to note is July 22, Thursday. We're not going to be in session on that date at all. So that gives you a lovely 4-day weekend, 4-day break from this trial when it, just when we'll need it. So July 22, if you want to make some other plan, feel free to do so on that weekend or on that starting on that Thursday. So with that, Mr. Henderson, are you ready to play the balance of the video testimony of Daniel Goldberg?
Yes, thank you. Resuming exactly where we left off. This People 78, testimony of Danny Goldberg, 12 minutes, 3 seconds.
With Susie much closer in time to her murder.
Yes.
Do you recall having conversations with her in the late 90s or maybe even 2000 before her murder regarding this issue?
I remember certainly the last conversation I had with her came up, and that was, I guess, the year 2000. Yeah.
And if you can, you please relate what occurred during the conversation that was stated?
Well, most of it we were catching up on personal matters, and she was asking about my children. So the part that's relevant to what you're asking me, I think, is that she told me that that Bobby was worried that it was possible the investigation into what happened to Kathy would be reopened because up until that point, supposedly, this is what I remember her telling me, supposedly there hadn't been convictions without a body, and that there then had been some conviction without a body, and there was a possibility that the Westchester prosecutor might reopen it, and that he was worried about that.
Do you recall when we spoke in February 2015, do you recall telling myself and Detective Lopez that you asked Susan, hey, what really happened regarding Kathy?
Well, I think I said, I don't remember exactly what I told you in the phone conversation. What I remember now is saying, what do you think really happened? Because enough time had passed. You know, she'd always been very quiet about it. I thought she might have something different to say.
All right, we're going to play, it's going to be DG005, clip, February 20th, 2015, page 21 of the transcript, line 23 to page 22, line 6.
And so now you're going to mark this as an exhibit,
yes.
And the next exhibit in order.
People 46
and 46A.
statement to me?
Well, I hear the tape, and I assume it's accurate.
And that's your voice, correct?
It sounds like me.
Mr. Goldberg, in that quote, you said it was definitely something I remember, and then you gave the quote of, you know, I'm not a gangster's daughter. I just want to clarify. your position is that this is not an exact quote, but that is your best memory of what she said. Is that correct?
Well, I remember the phrase "I'm the gangster's daughter" that just stuck in my mind as something poignant about the way Susan viewed herself. The other part of what you played, was a longer conversation, and I obviously seem to have said it, but as I sit here now, I remember it slightly differently.
And Mr. Goldberg, is it fair to say that the comments about "I'm the gangster's daughter, I have different standards," that was Susan Berman referring to her relationship with Bob Durst and the situation with Kathy Durst, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember, to the best of your memory, her saying the comments about having different standards for her friends and other people?
Yes.
And do you remember whether she used the exact words or not, her in essence telling you, communicating to you that she believed that Robert Durst had killed his wife?
I don't remember. Despite the fact that on the tape I said that, as I sit here now, I remember it slightly differently.
How is it you remember differently? In other words, what do you
My memory is that what she was saying is, even if he killed her, he's still my friend.
You would agree that's not what you said at the time on this?
I hear you. I'm just telling you right now, as I sit here, how it exists in my memory. It was quite a long time ago.
During your conversation with her, did the conversation come up about how she loved her father even though he had killed her?
I certainly knew that's what she meant. I don't know whether she used those words or not.
Code DG006, people's next in order, I think we're...
47A.
Page 22, lines 12 through 15. That's what you said.
No, I agree with what I thought that's just how I answered your question.
So your position is that that statement is a true statement of what Susan said to you?
I think it's a statement of what I thought she meant.
When you spoke to Susie this last time, do you recall that she conveyed to you in any way that she believed or had information that Bob Durst had killed his wife?
No.
At the time that you spoke to her, in the way that she conveyed the situation with Kathy Durst, did she make it appear to you that she knew more than what she was willing to tell you?
Yes.
And can you describe what you mean by that?
She always was secretive about that situation and never talked about it much.
Do you recall specifically what her words were or what the content of that part of the conversation was?
I don't, but she was always kept it as a confidential thing between them that she didn't talk much to me about.
Code DG16, February 20th, 2015, page 40, line 25 to page 41, line 11. People's next in order. 48A. that Susan was telling you that Bob had killed Kathy specifically. That was your testimony a moment ago. Do you recall?
Yes.
Code DG007.
Because you're marking 49 and 49A.
Yes, yeah, page 220, page 22, line 26, to page 23, line 6. Mr. Goldberg, would you agree that in making that statement, you did not qualify at all for belief that Susan was telling you that she believed that Bob Durst had killed his wife?
I think what I was saying is that I thought that's what she meant, as opposed to that's what she said.
And in terms of whether we're talking about the exact words, is it fair to say, Mr. Goldberg, that your belief was in having the conversation that whether she was using the exact words or not, that is what she was conveying to you, that Bob Durst had killed his wife, Kathy?
I thought there was a good possibility that's what she was conveying to me. She didn't say it in such an explicit way, but I thought there was a good chance she was saying that.
You did use the words, but my feeling is that she was telling me that she thinks he probably killed her. That's what you said, correct? And during this conversation, Susan made a big deal over the fact that they had never found a body previously, and that prior to the investigation had meant that they couldn't prosecute the case. Is that right?
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, that potentially there was a change in the DA, and the situation was now different.
I didn't know that there was a change in the DA, but she said the situation was now different.
Were you aware of Susan's financial situation with respect to her time in Colorado?
Yes.
And can you tell me what you knew about that?
She was living with Paul Kaufman. I don't know for how long. It seemed to me like it was a few years. And she had a certain amount of savings and spent it, almost all of it, trying to develop a musical theater piece that never came to fruition, and that meant that she had very little money left.
Did Susan ever come to you for money?
She did.
And did you ever loan her any money?
I did.
How much did you loan her?
I think it was $5,000.
Do you remember when this was in terms of any idea of how long?
I don't really remember. It seems to me like it would have been in the second half of the 90s, but I don't remember exactly which year it was.
When you loaned it to her, is it fair to say that there was no formal loan agreement?
Yes.
Is it also fair to say that you weren't planning on getting this money back?
Well, I wasn't counting on getting it back, that's for sure. I think if she made money, she would have paid it back.
Did you ever get the money back?
No.
Is it your memory that you found out about the Kathy Durst reinvestigation from Susan?
Oh, yes.
And during your time speaking to her, did she mention anything about having been contacted regarding the investigation?
No.
Do you recall what was her reaction specifically when she told you that there was a new investigation into Kathy's disappearance?
I think she was worried about Bobby, or she was worried that he was worried.
And is it fair to say that she did not in any way seem happy? Wow, they're going to reinvestigate. Maybe they'll find the person who killed my best friend's wife. Did she express those kind of sentiments?
No, her concern was about Bobby.
And did she also make it clear to you that this reinvestigation was not a positive development for Bobby Durst?
Correct.
Did she tell you that Bob Durst was, quote, nervous about the reinvestigation?
Yes.
And did she relate to you that he was now nervous because he was concerned that even though there wasn't a body, that might not forestall prosecution any longer?
Yes.
Did Susan tell you that Bob Durst had loaned her money?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
I don't remember more than that. I was aware of the fact he loaned her money. I think she said that he'd been very helpful. I think it was in that, she was appreciative of it.
Do you know when those loans took place?
No.
Was Susan the kind of person whose nature was to keep secrets?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you, I want you to assume the following given your relationship with her. I want you to assume that Susan Berman made a phone call after Kathy Durst's death to the dean of the medical school pretending to be Kathy. I want you to assume that for a moment. I want you to tell me, knowing your relationship with her, with Susan, is that the kind of thing that you think she would have volunteered to do?
No.
And why is that?
She was being very secretive and discreet about the whole situation, and I was not that close a confidant that she would tell me things that everything that was going on with her, and it wouldn't surprise me at all that she would not tell me something like that if that hypothetical thing can happen.
Knowing yourself, are you the kind of person, let's assume that she would have told you that. Given your relationship, do you believe that she would have thought you would have been judgmental about it?
I don't know how to...
DG 14, people's next in order. Mr. Goldberg, how old are you?
67?
DG 003. No, I'm sorry, you're right. DG 014, I'm sorry. I don't know if I gave the page 39, lines 14 and 19, same interview.
And that's again 50 and 58.
That you said a moment ago, you didn't really think so. Was that?
I didn't, I think that's probably true what you just played. I'm not contradicting it. My memory and focus on it is not the same now as when I had that conversation. But I think that's true.
So let me ask you, you know yourself. And so there are individuals that you could share things with. As an example, you might be cheating on your girlfriend, and you might tell a buddy, hey, I'm cheating on my wife and my girlfriend. There are some people you would know that their response is going to be, they don't really care, and other people are going to think less of you. You agree that you understand the foundational prerequisite that I'm setting up here? You understand what I'm saying so far?
I understand it, yes.
So my question is, knowing you, and knowing what Susan knew about you, do you think that she would have been aware that, you know what, you would have been judgmental on something like this, as you said you were?
Sure. I definitely, though she didn't tell me, I'm not surprised she was keeping a lot of this from me, and That makes sense to me, but I said it then, I'm not contradicting it now. It doesn't form itself in my brain the same way now as it did in that conversation. But I'm not contradicting or walking away from that recording.
Would you describe Susan as a perceptive person?
Yes,
And it's fair to say, very perceptive.
yes.
And if I were to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 100, in that same scenario, with 1 being she absolutely would have told me, and 100 being there's no way she would have told me, what number would you say?
I would say 100.
The last time you had contact with Susan, was it by phone or was it in person?
It was on the phone.
And do you know when that was?
It was, I think it was December of whatever year it was that she was killed. It certainly was after Thanksgiving because it was prior to my family going away for the holiday period. And so it's either very end of November or the first half of December.
And during that call, did she mention any future plans she had to see Robert Durst?
Yes.
What did she say to you?
She said that she was expecting to see him around the holidays.
And did she expand on that any more than that?
No.
Did you ask her anything more about that?
No.
Now, if I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 100, again, how sure are you that that's what she told you, that she had plans to see him around that time?
Which one is 100?
100 is absolute. 100 would be 1 would 0 would be no. There's no way. I'm not sure at all. 100 being I'm absolutely certain that's what she told me.
100.
And is it fair to say, Mr. Goldberg, that you have spent time when you found out Susan had been murdered trying to think about what happened?
Sure. Yes.
Is it fair to say that you've gone over in your mind, gosh, when's the last time I talked to her? What did she tell me? Things like that, correct?
Well, it definitely meant that my memory of the last conversation was much more important than it otherwise would have been.
Was this the same conversation where she mentioned the comments you made about the reinvestigation?
Yes.
And over the years, Mr. Goldberg, have you always remembered it the same way in terms of that Susan had said to you she had plans to see Bob Durst?
Yes.
How did you find out that she'd been murdered?
I don't remember how I found out. Through the media, but I don't remember whether it was online or in a newspaper. It was while we were on vacation somewhere in the Caribbean, and it was, it was through the media that I think that's how I found out. Maybe somebody called me, but my memory is reading that.
Do you recall, was there an incident of you getting home from a trip and finding gifts?
Yes.
Can you explain what that was about, please?
Yeah, when my wife at the time and 2 kids came back from this vacation, and there was a package of gifts for the kids from her that were pretty expensive children's clothing.
And by the time you received these packages, was Susan already been murdered?
Yes, she'd already been murdered.
As you sit here today, is it fair to say that you did not want to testify unless you absolutely had to?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you made that pretty clear to me on multiple occasions?
Yes.
And in the end, did you end up saying, you know what, I don't want to be here, it's my duty, I'll do it?
Yes.
Thank you, I have no further questions. No questions?
Thank you. May the witness be excused?
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
We'll mark it People 78B, the exhibit sheet, this cross-references the 5 exhibits played in the video. It's a 2-page document, 78B. 78C is a 3-page transcript. In the video, it was 46A. 78D is a 3-page transcript. In the video, it was 47A. 78E is a 2-page transcript. In the video, it was 48A. 79F is a 2-page transcript. In the video, it was 49. And 78G is a 2-page transcript. In the video, it was 50.
Thank you. Next from the people.
Next from the people is a conditional examination. We're playing the video of Robin Morse. The DVD will be 79, the transcript 79A. The DVD is 1 hour and 49 minutes long.
Thank you.
Playing full 79.
Please come stand in the witness stand. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you're about to give in the constant interview before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Counsel, can you please be seated? Move your chair closer to the mic. Please state and spell your first and last name.
My name is Robin. My last name is Morse. Karr-M-O-R-S-E.
You may proceed, Ms. Morgan.
Morse, are you nervous today?
Yes, nervous.
And how nervous?
I think I'd rather go and have my teeth drilled all day, but I'm nervous.
I'm not gonna lie, people have compared me sometimes in my performance in court to having teeth drilled, but so let's see if I can live up to it. It's not gonna be bad at all. I'm gonna ask questions. If there's something you don't understand, just let us know. I will start off with my toughest question. What is your age?
I'm 72.
You are hiding it quite well.
Thank you.
Ms. Morse, can you tell me, what do you do for a living?
I'm a therapist, family therapist, and author of a couple of books on the brain.
And can you tell me what kind of education you have?
My education is in counseling psychology, and I have a master's of art in teaching and child development.
And how long have you been in the field?
About 40 years.
And when you say that you have written some books, why have you written those books on?
The books are on the relevance of trauma early in life to what happens in terms of adult behavior. As in particular, the first book is called Ghosts from the Nursery, and it's on the relevance of what happens in the first 4 years of life and adult violence. And particularly, it was written at the time of the school shootings, and we were looking at the whys and how these kids get there and what their backgrounds were.
I think I need to adjust our equipment here. Maybe I'll order up. Somehow you're,
Am I talking
the
to
way
you?
you're speaking into the microphone is making it pop a little bit.
Huh?
Maybe, that's will fix it. And then try again.
Did you get that on the book?
Okay, all right.
The second book is called Scared Sick, and it's on the relevance of early trauma in the first 4 years of life to adult health, which, many people think that cancers and stomach problems and osteoarthritis and other things are entirely genetic. The reality is that trauma to the brain, when that organism is developing, is very relevant to creating some proclivity toward certain kinds of genetically based issues. But the issue is epigenetic for so many diseases that we look at.
Do you have an interest in juvenile justice issues?
I do.
And have you done work in that area?
I have, my very first job.
And what kind of work and interest do you have in that area?
Well, I have an interest in policy. I wrote a book about a young man who was sentenced to life at age 16. And I tend to look at a lot of behavior through the brain, which isn't, it's looking, instead of looking at just psychology or kind of an ephemeral concept, it's an organic concept, and it's very much affected by my experience.
In terms of your policy positions that you take, is it fair to say that you would agree that you tend to be more defense-oriented than prosecution-oriented?
Well, it depends. It depends on the individual and on the defendant, but yes.
And in fact, you have, you spent time with an individual who's on death row.
I did, and I do.
As you sit here today, is this the first time that you've ever testified, been called by the prosecution in a case?
Yes, it's the first time I've been called by the prosecution.
And in terms of, you said you were nervous and you didn't want to be here. Why in particular, what is your kind of reluctance to coming into court and testifying?
I tend to be critical of the criminal justice system, of the correction system, and I feel badly about my friend and feel that I need to do it, but I don't like being here.
So I'm going to start off and ask you, when I say the name Susan Berman, is that a name that you recognize?
Of course.
And how did you know Susan Berman?
I met her when we were about 13, and we were in high school. We were in a girls' boarding school, and she and I were the only two orphans, and we became very close friends.
And where was this in what state?
St. Helens Hall in Portland, Oregon.
And do you recall you said high school, but then I think you said, what age was it?
13. I think she came to the hall a year earlier, but I can't remember that. I think she came in the 8th grade, but the school goes K through 12, and I think she came in the middle of the year, but toward the end of the 8th grade, but we met. Basically, we were fast friends in high school.
And when you said that the two of you were the only orphans, how did you find out that she was an orphan?
I've known Susie really well, and in fact, she told me that about her mother's death. She told me about her father's death.
If I were to ask you, when you first got to know Susan Berman at school, how close did you two become when you were in high school?
Very close. We spent most weekends together. Any time that we weren't in class, she stayed at my house. And I went with her to Vegas and met Uncle Chicky and Aunt Marge. And we were very close. We saw each other every day. We talked every day, and we talked deeply. She had been very afraid. She believed that her mother and her father were killed by the mob. She didn't, that isn't the truth, apparently, but she believed that, and she was pretty paranoid.
So this is a question is not an invitation to tell a story. A question calls for an answer. So listen to the question and answer only the question.
Okay.
You may proceed.
Is it fair to say, ma'am, that Susan Berman was one of your kind of all-time closest friends?
Absolutely.
Can you describe, if I were to say, what was her personality like? Can you describe her? And if you can, I'm more interested in her personality, as an adult rather than when you first met her.
She's smart and energetic and funny and a little neurotic. She had a lot of phobias.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she at one point was in an accident because she was afraid of going over bridges. She was afraid of heights. She was always afraid of anyone getting her. She was neurotic,
How was she about her personal security?
hypervigilant.
Is she the kind of person, based on your experience with her, that would let a stranger into her home in the middle of the night?
Absolutely not.
Did you guys remain the same level of close friends throughout high school?
Yes,
And did you both graduate from high school?
yes,
Were you the same year?
yes,
Do you remember what year you guys graduated?
63.
And after high school, did you and Susan stay in contact?
Yes, she was in my wedding. We were all the way through close friends.
And what year were you married?
1965,
And was that up in Oregon?
yes.
And you said Susan came up for the wedding, was it your wedding?
Oh, yeah.
Did Susan go to college, if you can remember, locally, or did she go out of state?
She went to Berkeley and UCLA, and I visited her there.
Do you know, as you sit here today, do you remember if she went to Berkeley first or UCLA first?
I think she went to Berkeley first, but I'm not sure.
Did you stay in contact with her throughout her college years?
I did.
And how often do you think you guys would talk while she was away in college?
Every couple of months for a couple of hours. Yeah.
Did you did you see her much?
Anytime there were boy problems or things that she was working on, I was sort of a foul-weathered friend. But she'd call me when stuff was going on.
Do you remember when the last time was that you actually physically saw Susan?
I saw her in New York. I don't remember the year, but I had young children. My husband and I went to New York City to visit with her.
Do you remember telling detectives previously in 2001 that you had last seen her about 17 years ago, which would be about 1984?
Yes,
Does that sound about right?
it does. The reason, yes, because I have a 2-year-old, and he was born in 82.
Were you aware of any of the men in Susan's life?
Yes,
And did you meet any of Susan's boyfriends?
no. Well, yes, when she was at Berkeley, I did.
When Susan was away at school, did Susan mention to you a wealthy friend that she had?
She mentioned several wealthy friends. She was a good eavesdropper. Yes, she did.
All right, now, was there an individual that she mentioned that was from a powerful family in New York?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about this individual?
She told me they were very close friends. She was very loyal to this person, and she told me that she knew his wife as well, and that they were all friends.
And did you hear about this person while Susan was in college, or was this somebody you only heard about much later?
Oh, no, later. I'm sorry. Yes, later. I think it was later. I don't remember her. I don't remember that she was in college at the time. She talked about the friendship, but she didn't tell me a whole lot about the situation until later.
So you knew about this person in college, but you didn't get
Yes.
the details until much later.
That's right.
You were aware and you were told that this person was wealthy and connected and lived in New York, is that correct?
That's right.
Well, will you wait until the question's finished before you answer? Because our court reporter's trying to take it all down. You're actually speaking before the answer's completed. So wait until you hear the answer, pause a moment, and then give your answer.
Do you recall if at that time Susan told you, or if you remember, what this person's name was?
No.
Did she indicate to you how close she was to this person?
They were good friends. She felt very simpatico, and she loved him. Not romantically, but as a friend.
Did she mention anything about this individual's family history that you can recall?
spot at this moment, I don't recall a lot, except as I mentioned, I said she knew his wife later.
Do you know specifically, let me back it up, do you know specifically the first time, if you can remember, and you're shaking your head?
I don't remember.
Okay. And ma'am, I want to ask you something. As a psychotherapist, the way that your mind works, have you expressed previously to us that you're more relational oriented and that you tend to remember things people have told you better than the timing or the names?
That's right. I have.
And is that something, ma'am, that I suggested to you, or is that something you volunteered?
It's something that I volunteered because I was embarrassed that I couldn't remember. I'm a therapist. I listen to how things are happening and not so, I write down things like husbands' names and children and dates and all that. But what I remember, what I take away and what I'm working with is the feeling and is the emotion involved and the habit, especially with Susie, because she was often kind of erratic emotionally, and my role was kind of to bring her down, to calm her down.
And you refer to her as Susie, correct?
Yeah.
With Susie, when you would speak to her, were you speaking to her as her therapist, or were you speaking to her as her friend?
I was speaking to her as her friend.
So when you were talking about that you normally take notes down, etc., is that when you're doing your therapy, or is that when
Yes, it was friend, yes. It was, I was trying to explain that I am embarrassed at the fact that I sometimes don't remember dates. My takeaway message from people is how they feel and what was going on relationally.
Again, you interrupted the question to give your answer. Please don't do that. Just wait until the question's finished and then answer.
So if, ma'am, what you mentioned before about the note taking and the fact that you will take notes with your patients, that is not something that you would do when you were speaking to Susie's friend. So that's what the judge means, and I understand what's going on, Ms. Morse, and it's a normal thing with witnesses. You understand my question, and the way people normally interact is when the person listening understands what the person asking is saying, they just start talking, but we don't have a court reporter normally in our lives getting everything done. Although sometimes it would help if they follow ourselves around.
It'd help at home, wouldn't it?
It would absolutely help. That's exactly what I was saying. Actually, your case could hurt. Good. Good, that's a good point. And it's expensive. You know, you want to catch. So you can, even though I understand you know where I'm going on this, if you can just wait until I finish, because it makes it much easier on the court reporter. Does that make sense? Oh, here's the other thing. The court reporter, if you're nodding, they need an oral answer.
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid very much. I want to slow down for you, but...
Yeah, but you can, you're nodding your head, but you need to respond.
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. So, let me continue 1 moment. So, what did Susie tell you, what you remember about what she would say about this person's wife?
She told me she'd gone missing. That was her word, that was what she said. She'd gone missing, and she indicated that she was kind of on the inside of that because she knew the couple, and I thought she was missing. I certainly didn't suspect anything else.
I'm going to go back, but I want to just follow my outline here so I don't miss anything. I'm going to come back where we just were. But when I say the name Niall Brenner, is that somebody that a name you remember?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell me, what do you remember about Niall Brenner?
Sissy had a big crush on Niall Brenner, and she was emotionally, she was very attached to him, and I think she thought he reciprocated her feelings, but it wasn't working very well, and she later told me she thought he was bisexual.
did Susie express frustration with you that her romantic feelings for Niall were not reciprocated?
Yes, she was frustrated and sad.
Were you familiar, and did Susie discuss her career with you over the years?
Yes,
When I say the term, the title, Easy Street, are you familiar with that?
yes.
Can you tell me what Easy Street was?
It was the story of her growing up in Vegas and the mob and so on. It was the story of, partly, it was a lot about Susie's family.
If I were to ask you, Morse, how intelligent a woman was Susie?
Very.
And based on your friendship with her and your knowledge, is it fair to say that she was someone whose career initially kind of took off? She was successful early in her professional life.
Yes.
Is it fair to say she was very successful early in her professional life?
I thought so, yes.
Did that professional success, did it last over time?
No.
Is it fair to say that in your experience that you got to watch Susie kind of peak early and then head down?
Yes.
How far down did you see her go?
Very far down. She had no money. I was sending her money and coffee and food. She called me very upset and very embarrassed to have to ask for money. She did.
Let me back you up. When you knew her growing up, what was her financial situation as far as you
She was very wealthy.
And at some point, did that change?
Yes.
And do you know, in reference to, you know when it changed? Any idea the year approximately?
No, it was, from my perspective, sort of an evolution over time, mostly in the last 5 years.
Were you aware that Susan had married Mr.?
Yes.
And did you go to that wedding?
I was invited. I was either pregnant or just had a brand new baby, and I sent my daughter.
And approximately, was your daughter an adult at the time?
Young adult. She was about 18.
So your daughter represented your family at her wedding?
She did.
Did you ever meet Mr.?
No.
Did you know that Susie had later dated a man named Paul Kaufman?
Yes.
Did you ever meet Paul Kaufman?
No.
Did you know that Susie ended up, in essence, having custody of Paul's 2 children?
Yes.
And did Susie seem to have, how would she talk about the children in terms of their level of importance to her?
The children were very important to her, but she had some really rocky times, particularly with Nella, the daughter.
Susie was murdered in December of 2000. Were you aware, when I say that time, does that sound about right to you?
Yes.
Around the time of her death, I'm going to, let's go back, a couple of years. How frequently were you speaking to her?
About once a month.
And those times when you would talk, do you remember what the conversations generally were about? Were they about any specific thing?
No, she generally, as I said, I was sort of a foul weather friend. She tended to call when the chips were down. And so we talked about whatever was on her mind, and I generally tried to distract her a little bit by talking about things that were familiar to us, classmates and things that we've done together.
Do you know, in those last couple of years, did Susie discuss her financial status at that point?
I I don't know exactly when she began. I guess right in there, I began sending her money.
And did she request money from you, or did you just send it?
Well, she let me know her need. I sent her money. Later, she requested money.
Any idea how much money you sent her over time?
$1,000.
And do you recall what her financial situation was specifically in the last months when you were speaking to her?
It was terrible. She was living in poverty. She had trouble with paying basic things.
Did she mention anything about somebody sending her money?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She said that someone,
So, you can answer.
she was, you asking me.
I'll ask again. Did she mention in the last couple of months before her murder, did she mention that someone had sent her money?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about that?
She said it wasn't enough.
Did she indicate to you who it was that had sent it to her?
No.
Do you recall previously telling detectives back in 2001, let me back up. Do you remember talking to a detective,
Yes.
Paul Coulter? So that's where the judge, if I can just finish. So, do you remember talking to a detective, Paul Coulter from Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division back in approximately March 20th, 2001?
Yes.
And
Vaguely.
right now, I would assume now, if I said, hey, do you remember everything you told Detective Coulter, my correct answer would be, I'm not sure.
That's right.
Do you recall telling Detective Coulter that Susan told you that someone she referred to as high profile had recently sent her $15,000?
No.
As you sit here today, does that trigger any memory of you remembering, yes, you know what, I remember Susan telling me something similar, or does it not?
Yes.
So, having brought that up, do you have a memory of Susan having told you that someone high profile had sent her $15,000?
Somebody who was a good friend had sent her $15,000.
And do you also recall telling Detective Coulter that this was a big name person with a lot of money?
Yes.
But she wouldn't say who?
Yes. She wouldn't say who.
Did Susan, you mentioned before that she had told you that this friend had a wife who had disappeared. Do you recall talking about this, who was missing?
Yes.
Did Susan ever tell you that she, quote, harbored a secret for this close friend?
She said she knew a lot about it. And yes, it sounded like it was secretive information.
Now, I'm going to play something for you, and I want you to tell me if this is your voice. We're going to play, it's going to be code RM028, 42516, page 14, lines 20 through 24.
Is this a new exhibit?
Yes.
55 and 55A, the transcript.
Oh, yeah, the page was again on page 14, lines 20 through 24. 42516.
She talked about him as a very close friend that she harbored a secret about, probably as early as, I don't know, 90s, early 90s.
Let me just back up.
Or the late 80s.
Okay. Is that your voice?
Ask me?
And do you recall now saying that Susan told you that she harbored a secret about this person? Those are your words, correct? Now, is that Is that your voice?
Yeah.
And is that what you said?
Yes.
And does that kind of refresh your memory about having previously said that she harbored a secret?
Yes.
And were those your words or were those my words?
My words.
Do you recall Susan bringing up to you at a later point in time, near the time of her murder, and asking you if you had ever heard of a case in New York involving a guy whose wife had gone missing?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about that?
Are you talking about on the last conversation that I talked, when I talked to her?
You know what, ma'am, I'm going to withdraw my question because I actually, I made a mistake in the way I asked it. Did Susan at one point ask you if you had ever heard of a case in New York involving a guy whose wife had disappeared?
Yes.
And what did she tell you?
She told me she was on the inside of some information about the story.
And this, she did not, at that point during that conversation, she did not volunteer to you what specific information she had or didn't have. Is that correct?
That's right.
Did you and Susan have more than one conversation about this friend in New York whose wife had disappeared?
Yes.
And can you tell me what else do you remember Susan saying about this situation?
I remember the night that I last talked to her, that she was very nervous, and she said that someone was coming to see her, that she was going to talk to about this case, and she said she was going to blow it wide open. It's as if she had information.
Now, I'm going to back up a second. Did Susan make clear to you how she felt about this friend?
She sounded like she was pissed. She was angry.
Did you say previously, during April 25th, 2016 interview, at page 12, lines 27 and 28 to page 13, lines 1 through 3, that you believe, I'm quoting you, I believe that we talked in 1999 about it, but she had 2 or 3 times when she brought up a situation about a friend, and then she seemed to really care about him, love him.
She did.
And you continued, and she talked about this case of his wife disappearing on a couple of occasions way back. Do you recall that being
Yes.
what happened?
Yes.
And if you can, I know it's difficult, but if I can just finish the question before you end up, just wait for me to stop completely talking. I do the same thing, so it's hard. But I'm going to try to remind you as best. You don't have to slump your head. It wasn't. You're not in trouble.
This is not an ordinary conversation. This is an examination by an attorney and cross-examination by another attorney. So the question must precede the answer. You may continue. It's not an ordinary way to have conversation. So I don't fault you at all. I just need you to get used to it and try to comply with that format.
So, ma'am, did Susan Berman, did you previously state that she was elusive about revealing to you about what information she had?
Yes.
And do you recall, ma'am, saying, quote, and I'm at 425, 16, page 6, and this is occurring between lines 14 through 27 approximately. You said that she was very elusive about the details, and she was also loyal to that person.
Yes.
Page 6, lines 14 through 27.
Let me know when you're ready for me to continue. Okay?
I just read it.
All right. Ma'am, do you recall saying the following. And she talked about a guy she knew, and that she had mentioned that his wife had gone missing, and that she knew more about it than she was willing to say to anybody in authority. And she clearly wanted me to ask about it, and I sort of shut her down. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Can you please explain what you meant by that statement?
She wasn't willing to talk to me about it. She was very upset, and it was something that she was sitting on. She was very loyal to this person and made it clear that she did not want to expose him.
And ma'am, the statement, and that she knew more about it than she was willing to say to anybody in authority, is that something that you said, or is that something that came from me during our interview?
It's something I said.
And is that your memory of what Susan told you?
Yes.
Now, during your conversations with Susan Berman about, at a certain point, I'm talking about let me withdraw the question. Near the end of Susan's life, when this conversation about this close friend's missing wife came up, did Susan make it sound as if the friend's wife was dead?
No.
Do you recall, ma'am, telling me I'm going to play code RM030, the date 4/25/16, page 15, lines 26 through 27? Can you play that, please?
56A. 56A. Okay.
I assume this is being done to impeach her, Your Honor? But she just answered the question, so it can't be a refresher recollection.
Sounds like it is.
It would be impeachment, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
She made it sound like the wife was gone. Like the wife was dead.
Did she tell you that as a result of what had happened between her and this close friend in a situation involving his missing wife, that she questioned his friend's character?
Yes.
What did she tell you as best you can remember about that?
That he hadn't come through for her like she thought he would.
Did she tell you that she was now skeptical about what the friend had told her about the circumstances of his wife's disappearance?
She didn't use those words, but she sounded like she had reason not to believe everything she previously thought.
I'm going to play RM038, 4/25/16, page 23, lines 18 and 28, to page 24, lines 1 through 3.
57A.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you spoke to Detective Whalen, you mentioned that that Susie was questioning this friend's character, and she was skeptical about the friend and his wife's disappearance. You said, quote, she had skepticism about the circumstances of that girl's disappearance. And so is that still your understanding?
Yeah.
And so I just want to clarify this. If you're saying that she was skeptical about the friend and the wife's disappearance, and she was skeptical about the circumstances of the disappearance, did you take that to mean that, in other words, that she was now skeptical about the version of the disappearance that the friend had given about his wife?
Yes.
Ma'am, is that your voice?
Yes,
And does that exchange, does that accurately characterize your understanding?
it does. It does. She didn't ever use the word dead. She simply said exactly what I said.
Did Susie tell you that in essence, as a result of her skepticism, that she was now, quote, down, unquote, or, quote, disappointed, unquote, with this really close friend whose wife had disappeared?
Yes,
What do you remember her saying about that?
that she wasn't who she believed he was.
Did Susan tell you that she had stuck with this close friend through him being accused of involvement in his wife's disappearance?
Yes,
Did Susan ever tell you, or did she imply to you, that she had information about this friend's wife's disappearance?
yes.
And what specifically did she say or imply or give you the impression about with respect to her knowledge of his wife's disappearance?
She simply told me she had the inside story.
And as you sit here, do you remember the exact words she used?
No,
These comments about the friend's missing wife and her statements about speaking to somebody about what had happened, did those come up near the time that she was murdered?
yes,
Do you remember speaking to Susie sometime in December of 2000?
yes,
And do you recall, during that conversation, do you recall Susan bringing up this issue of the friend's missing wife and the knowledge she had about the case?
yes.
What do you remember about that?
I remember that she brought it up in the beginning of the conversation, and I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to talk about it simply because it was a hard thing to talk about, and she was getting more nervous. And I sort of tried to distract her, and then she came back to it. And I finally said to her, Susie, what are you talking about? And she said, Robbie, I'd tell you, but your life would be in danger.
Do you remember her telling you that she was going to blow the case wide open?
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, do you recall what Susie told you specifically about what she was going to do?
Yes.
What did she say?
She said, and it was her phrase, that that someone was coming and she was going to blow this case wide open. And I said, Susie, what are you talking about?
My question is, do you recall what Susie specifically told you about what her intention was regarding this case?
She told me she was going to blow this situation wide open. She was very nervous. She was very conflicted. She was very disappointed and somewhat angry, but she was going to do it because she felt it was the right thing to do. She said, I'm going to blow this case wide open.
Did she specifically tell you, I'm going to say the truth about the disappearance of the wife?
She might have.
I'm going to play RM024. This is going to be page 12, 425-16, lines 5 through 11.
Equals 58. 58.
Go on. They don't play.
did we play what you marked as 57?
I'm pretty sure we did.
Okay, 58.
And the thing about the 2000 conversation was that there was some amount of angst, and I mean, she was telling me she was going to be a big person in this case, and was going to tell the truth, and that it was going to blow the case wide open, but she didn't say, I'm going to say the truth about the disappearance of the wife.
So ma'am, do you recall stating back during your interview on April 25th, let me put it this way, is that an accurate depiction of what
Yes.
she told you?
So the answer is correct.
Did, to the best of your memory, you said Susan talked about blowing the case wide open. Do you recall using that terminology?
Yes.
Have you also previously used the terminology that she had been subpoenaed, or used the word that she said testify? Do you recall that?
No.
As you sit here today, go another way, did you correct previously? Did you correct and say, you know what? Below the case, the word case was the wrong word. I should have said situation.
Yes.
And as you sit here today, is that your memory?
Yes.
So when you're saying the term case, you don't mean in a legal standpoint like there's a
No.
legal case.
No. There was no.
Did Susan tell you? One moment. Specifically, that she was going to be talking about the disappearance, providing information to another individual?
Not that I remember.
Ma'am, do you recall stating, you were asked, what you really mean is she's telling you she had information and she's going to be talking to somebody, and you responded, yeah. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I just want to make sure you understood my question. Previously, you testified today that Susan told you she was going to be talking to somebody, correct?
Yes.
So I just want to clarify, as you sit here today, is your memory that Susan had mentioned she was going to be talking to somebody about what she knew about this case?
Yes.
And how
Situation. Yes, I'm positive. Yes, that's true.
Ma'am, do you recall what specifically did Susan tell you? She mentioned that she rethought her position.
She was sitting on something that she knew, and she looked back at this person with a different feeling, a different sense of who he was, and that she was going to talk about something to do with the situation.
Did she mention to you that this rethinking involved this person not having come through for her?
Yes.
Do you recall Susan Berman mentioning at any point that the individual with the missing wife had not come through for her?
Yes.
And we're going to recess until 1:30. Ma'am, you're... You may sit down. Do not speak with any other witness about your testimony until you're done. Thanks. Next session, and witnesses resume the witness stand. You remain under oath. Mr. Durst is here with his lawyers. People are representing. Mr. Lillian, you may resume your examination.
Now, when I had asked you, you were talking about the area when you were speaking to Susan near the time of her murder. And I was asking you, excuse me, about whether or not Susan talked about having come to any realization. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall what, if anything, specifically she said to you about a realization she had come to?
I think she was disappointed and frustrated and angry at this person for not sending her money and for perhaps being a different person than she thought he was.
Do you recall her? Do you recall, ma'am, previously stating that she was deciding to spill the beans?
Yes.
Was that your term or my term?
No. What she said was that she was going to blow the situation wide open.
Did she tell you that she was going to meet with someone and that she was going to spill the beans?
Yes. Yes.
Well, if you can, again, it's kind of the same problem. If you could just wait right until I finish my question before you respond. Did Susan mention anything or imply about the purpose of the money she was being sent by this friend?
No.
Now, do you recall using that term, hush money, as explaining what you believe Susan was implying to you during that conversation?
I did use the term.
And again, was that a term that I brought up or that you brought up?
It's a term that I brought up.
And specifically, ma'am, do you recall saying the following? And this is from page 16, and this is between line 17 of page 16 and line 17 of page 17. Oh, I'm sorry, 218.15. Sorry about that.
New exhibit?
No, I'm not gonna play the clip at this point. I'm just gonna ask her about it. I might.
Yes.
Ma'am, do you recall stating? Oh, the one I stated. What do you want to do? It's going to be 218.15, page 16, and this area is covered between line 17 on that page and page 17, line 17. So it's covered in this area. And so she was calling because she was in dire straits, and she was getting ready to testify at something. Something was going on. She said, it was a big deal. And one more time said, I can't tell. I said, what are you? And then you're asked, when you said she was in dire straits, just financially, emotionally, or what is it? What was it? You respond both. Detective says, okay. You then say that she was getting ready for this trial before she was being subpoenaed. She had been subpoenaed. For a moment, I apologize, Your Honor, that is not the fine line. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me continue. So it's still on the same time the next page. You end up saying, but was that this guy had been sending her money, and she implied, but she did not use the word. She implied that it was hush money that she was being paid. Do you recall saying that?
That's right.
And although you said the hush money term was your term, in speaking to Susan about what had happened, am I correctly understanding your testimony is that is the situation she was describing?
Yes.
So the situation she's describing is hush money, but you're the one using those words.
That's right.
Thank you. Did she at any point mention to you anything about being fortunate regarding her, that she needed money?
Fortunate that she needed money?
Ma'am, do you recall Susan telling you that it was fortunate for her that he needed her and was willing to send her money, keep her going? Do you recall saying that? Do you understand my question?
I have that recollection, but I wouldn't now use that word, fortunate. but I probably did use that word when I spoke to you.
Forgetting about the word fortunate, did Susan communicate to you that in essence, she was lucky, it was working out for her, whatever the term you want to use, that this person that needed Susan because of the information she had, that therefore she was saying he was setting her mind?
Yes.
Ma'am, during these conversations you had with Susan near her murder, did she express any anger toward this friend regarding the financial issue?
Yes.
And can you describe what you mean by that, please?
She said that she hoped or thought there would be more support or more money forthcoming, and it had dried up, or it hadn't been happening, and she anticipated that it would have been, so she was frustrated and angry.
Did she tell you that she was did she sound on the phone ticked off?
Yes.
And are those words ticked off that you've used previously to describe?
Yes, I have used that word, and I used the word pissed off. That's cool.
During your conversations with Ms. Berman in December of 2000, did she communicate to you that because her friend had not been as generous with the money as she expected, that she was getting to a position where she was going to tell what she knew?
Yes.
Can you please explain that?
Well, she indicated that someone was coming to town and that she was going to blow the case wide open. She was going to talk about the stuff that she had been sitting on out of loyalty and out of not wanting to blow the whistle on whatever had happened, but she indicated that she was very nervous about it, she was very anxious about it, that she felt strongly that she needed to do it.
Was it you or she that connected the person had not been giving her the money she wanted with her change that she was now going to talk to this person? Is that something she said, or is that something that you took from what she told you?
I took it from what she told me, I think. She implied it very strongly.
So she didn't use those exact words.
That's right.
That was the implication of your conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Did she tell you at all that she was ambivalent about giving more information to you about the New York man and his missing wife?
Yes.
And did she tell you why she didn't want to give you information?
She told me my life would be in danger.
Specifically, do you recall what she said to you?
She said, Robbie, I would tell you, but your life would be in danger.
And ma'am, the statement, she said, I can't tell you that because it would put you in danger. Are those words you used previously to describe what Susan told you? Mm-hmm. And when you said that, did you also add, and those are close to her words?
Probably true.
I'm going to play RN 055, 42816, page 10, lines 26 through 28, to page 11, lines 1 through 5. 59.
And she told me that telling me the truth would endanger me. She said, I can't tell you that because it would put you in danger. And those are close to her words.
Can't tell you what?
Can't talk to me about the friend.
Okay.
It was a big deal to her. But she felt desperate and she felt determined. And that's all I remember.
I just want to ask you, were those your words?
Yeah.
Ma'am, you described your relationship with Susan were found by the friend.
Yes.
I want to ask you, when you were about 40, you knew her approximately 40 years, is that correct?
Yes.
In the 40 years that you knew her, was there ever another subject that the two of you talked about where she ever told you, Robbie, I can't tell you that, your life would be in danger?
Absolutely not.
Is that something you're ever going to forget?
No. It's etched in my memory forever.
Did Susan tell you that although she was anxious about talking to the person, that she had definitely made the decision to go through with it regardless?
Yes.
Do you recall specifically what she said about that?
She said she had to do it. She was very conflicted and very sad and very upset, but she felt like it was the right thing to do.
Did she at any point during this conversation in December, did she mention to you when approximately she expected that she would be talking to this person where she would blow the situation wide open?
In just a few days. It was very imminent.
Do you recall previously stating that she told you that she was going to be talking to somebody in the following January, the next month?
Well, I talked to her just before Christmas, and so that the 1st of January was just a few days.
How did you find out that Susan had been murdered?
I had a classmate call me and tell me. I had a classmate tell me that it had happened.
Do you remember when you found out?
I don't remember.
Was it, I want you to assume that she was murdered the night of the 22nd or the morning of the 23rd of December of 2000. If I were to ask you, do you remember, did you find out near in time? Do you even know?
I don't know.
When you found out, what did you think had happened?
I don't know. I conjectured that it might have been because of the manner in which she was killed. I thought, well, maybe it's a mob hit, but I know Susie, and she wouldn't let somebody in easily. It would have been very difficult for her to have opened the door to anyone that she didn't know.
During your conversation with Susie in December, did she express?
Your Honor, 304. Pause the video at 1 hour, 1 minute, and 45 seconds.
All right, thank you. It is time for our mid-afternoon break. Let's come back at 3:20 p.m. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Mr. Durst is present, Mr. DeGuerin, and Mr. Henderson is at council table for the people, joined by his colleagues. Let's resume the video recording.
Testimony of Robin Morse is resuming exactly where we left off.
Apprehension about anything else she was doing other than this blowing the situation wide open.
She had had a fight with her landlady, and it was very stressful for her. It had been an ongoing thing, partly about her dogs and partly about her hygiene in the house. And she described conflict over that.
When you found out Susan had been murdered, did you at first, in any way in your mind, connect this friend with his missing wife to her murder originally?
Originally, no.
Was there a point in time when that changed?
Yes,
And can you tell me, how was it that it changed?
it changed when I saw the program on television, and it changed. Honestly, my feeling when I heard that she'd been murdered was that I was just so sorry I hadn't been more exacting with her about circumstances and said, damn it, Susie, tell me. But it wasn't until I saw the program that I felt that it all fit together.
Did you know that this individual with the missing wife in New York, did you know what this person's name was?
No,
Later on, based on what Susan had told you, did you yourself come to the conclusion that she was referring to Robert Durst?
I wondered about it. I certainly haven't heard that name except a long time ago, I think she talked about Bobby, but nothing that I thought, I didn't make that connection.
You said you referred to a program. Are you referring to the Jinx?
Yeah,
And you said that you watched the program with the Jinx. And is that when you connected up the name Robert Durst to the person she had been talking about
Yes.
with the missing wife in New York?
yes,
Now, did you go to Susie's funeral?
no,
Were you, Susie had a network of friends, is that correct?
yes,
Were you connected, as far as you know, to any of Susie's other friends?
no.
Ma'am, how would you, let me just go this way. When I say the name Linda Oaks, is that someone that you know?
No,
Is that someone you've ever spoken to?
no,
How about Lorraine Newman?
no,
How about Nick Chabin?
no,
How about Susan Harvin?
no,
How about Miriam Barnes?
no,
Have you ever met any of these people?
no.
Now, one moment. Did you see the movie All Good Things?
No,
And did you see the Jinx when it ran? The Jinx ran basically in February, beginning of February 2015 until early March, middle March 2015. Did you watch the Jinx, for lack of a better term, kind of live as it was going on? You understand what I mean by that?
I saw it.
So the Jinx was a 6-part series that aired on HBO. And it would come out on Sunday nights, one part at a time. So you could watch it on the first Sunday night that it aired, or you could watch them during the week, or you could watch them all later. Did you watch the Jinx at the time they were being aired? In other words, or did you look at them later?
I looked at them later.
And do you know, if you can remember, did you watch all 6 episodes of the Jinx?
Yes.
I'm going to ask the court to take judicial notice that the last episode of the Jinx, which aired on Sundays, aired on Sunday, it's either March 14th or 15th, the day of Mr. Durst's interview with me in New Orleans. And that therefore, on February 18th, 2015, the witness could not have watched all episodes of the Jinx because they hadn't aired yet. Will the court take judicial notice of that? And the other thing is, the court could take judicial notice. I'll ask for a stipulation. I don't think that's going to be disputed. Are you willing to stipulate?
I'll take John at his word.
Okay.
That's the stipulation.
Thank you. So, ma'am, when you interviewed with Detectives Whalen and Romero, as you sit here today, do you have a memory that, you know what, I had not seen all the episodes of the Jinx yet, or do you not remember?
I don't think I saw all the episodes when I met with the man who came up to my house.
I want to ask you, your testimony about what Susan told you about this close friend from New York and his missing wife. If I were to ask you, how sure are you that this is something that you remember from Susan versus something you saw on the Jinx, what would you say?
I'm sure.
On a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being I'm not sure and all 100 being I'm positive I heard it from Susan and not from watching the Jinx, what would your answer be?
99, 100.
Just not maybe cross-examining the witness?
Yes, thank you.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I'm one of the lawyers that's assisting Mr. Durst. We're one of the lawyers here. I recall Mr. Lewin asking you if you would talk to us.
You said that you might call me.
Do you remember telling Mr. Lewin that you did not want to talk to us?
Yes.
And do you remember Mr. Lewin telling you that if we contacted you to let you know?
Yes.
And do you remember the policeman saying that sometimes investigators that work for defendants appear to be law enforcement when they're really not, and they're going to try to talk to you that way, or could potentially try to talk to you that way? You remember that?
No.
And so recently, did Mr. Lewin say to you, Mr. Chesnoff would like to speak with you?
No.
So no time?
Are you talking about right now?
No, I'll put it to you this way. I inquired of Mr. Lewin if you would like to speak to us, and would you speak to us? And Mr. Lewin responded that you told him you did not want to speak to the defense lawyers.
That's true.
That's accurate, correct?
She said can we?
That's
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we know that you spoke to the police in 2001, correct?
Yes.
And we know that you spoke to the police in 2015, correct?
Yes.
And we know that you spoke to the police in 2016, correct?
Yes.
And we also know that you spoke to Mr. Wu, Mr. Valiant, and a DA investigator in 17, correct?
Yes.
So on 4 occasions, over a period of time, several hours at least, you've had an opportunity to speak to the prosecution in this case, correct?
Yes.
But you have refused to speak to the defense, is that not correct?
I haven't refused. I said I would not like to do that. I didn't know that there was a specific request, but yes, I did not want to do that.
Okay, so if I was informed that there was a specific request, that would be inaccurate?
He told me that you might call, and I said I didn't want to talk to you.
So let's assume I had asked, you would have said no, correct?
Quite likely, yes.
So on 4 occasions you spoke to the police, and on no occasions have you ever spoken to anybody representing Mr. Durst, correct?
That's right.
Okay. The interviews with them took many hours, did they not?
For Vegas.
Some hours.
In total.
In total, I'd say 8 hours.
Thank you. So until now, we really haven't had any chance to have any dialogue, correct?
Correct.
In February of 2015, you spoke to Detective Whalen and Detective Romero, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you tell them that Susie had the ability to antagonize people?
No?
Well, you knew her since she was 12 years old. Was she the kind of person, based on your experience, knowing her for 40 years, that did antagonize people, upset people? So your testimony is that Susie was easygoing.
I wouldn't say she was easygoing. I'd say she was anxious to please and very loving.
And neurotic?
Neurotic.
Had all sorts of phobias?
Yes.
Had troubled relationships?
Some.
Okay, mostly with men, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with her first husband, his name had a strange name. What was it?
Mr. Margulies, her
Okay.
only husband.
Okay, I noticed in the interviews with you, you referred to him as Mr.
She used to call him Mr. Mister.
Right now. And then she was involved with Mr. Kaufman, is that correct?
Yeah.
And she had a very antagonistic relationship with him, did she not?
I didn't hear it as antagonistic, no.
Well, when she confided in you, as you said in your statements, that he may have molested his own children, his own daughter, did you not consider that antagonistic?
On her part, no.
On his part?
I thought that was terrible, but she wasn't being antagonistic. That wasn't her role.
Did she complain to you that he provided her no financial support and that she was basically the breadwinner?
No.
So Mr. Kaufman supported her, that's your understanding?
No. We simply didn't talk about it.
Well, I want to understand something. You went to school with her when you started around 12 or 13 years old, correct?
Okay.
And did you go all the way through high school with her?
Yes.
So you would have spent about 5 years together.
Yep.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then after the 5 years were up, you went off to school and she went off to school, correct?
Yes.
Did you see each other physically during that time period?
Yes.
You visit her in college, she visited you in college?
Yes, and she was in my wedding during that time. I was married during college.
Okay, then after you finished your education, your formal secondary education, the two of you kind of drew geographically apart. Is that fair?
I went down to visit her when she was in college a couple of times, and she came to visit me. But yeah, I didn't see her as much when she was in New York.
Was she a big storyteller?
I'm sorry.
Was she a big storyteller?
She was a good storyteller.
She was a writer?
Yes.
Correct? She was creative?
Yes.
She had a very vivid imagination, correct?
Yeah, she tended to talk a lot about the truth, too.
I understand, but we're not fighting with each other. I know that she must have told you a few truthful things along the way, but did she have a vivid imagination?
Yes, I guess. That wouldn't be the first way I'd describe her.
Okay. Did she embellish on stories?
Yes.
She was very dramatic, wasn't she?
Yes.
Kind of a drama queen, wasn't she?
I wouldn't say a drama queen. I would just say she was used to living around very dramatic people. And she could be dramatic.
She had a theatrical bent to her, would that be fair?
No.
She spoke flowery words?
No.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Most of the conversations you had, at least in the last 15 to 20 years of her life, were telephonic, correct?
Yes.
So you didn't really spend a lot of time in her personal company, did you?
No.
So on occasion, once a month, you get on the phone with your old girlfriend and talk. Is that right?
Yes, we talked pretty intimately.
Did you ever meet Mr. Durst in all the 40 years that you had contact with, may I finish please? In all the years that you had contact with Ms. Berman?
No.
In fact, until you researched the question, she never even told you Mr. Durst's name in any of those conversations you had over the 40 years that you know her, did she?
I believe she referred to Bobby, but it was way back, and she never said his last name and never said his name, the late Bobby, Robert Durst.
Now you said in your interview in February of 2015 that Susan told you she was getting ready to testify at a proceeding. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
So, she told you she was going to testify at a proceeding, correct?
I believe those words were my words rather than what she directly said.
So you're telling us that in fact, Susan never told you she was testifying anywhere?
No, I remember when she told me she was going to talk to the authorities.
Okay, but if you use the word testify, that would be something that you imagined or thought as opposed to something she said.
If I use the word testify, perhaps there would be a reason that I thought that. But I don't remember her saying that word.
Okay, so you repeated the fact that she said she was going to testify at a proceeding in an interview with law enforcement, but in reality, you have no real recollection that she ever said that, correct?
She's going to talk to the authorities.
Okay, but answering my question, you were being interviewed by law enforcement, correct?
Right.
They were talking to you about the homicide of your friend, correct?
Well, she obviously wasn't going to testify there.
No, listen to my question. They were talking to you about the homicide of your friend, correct?
Yes.
It was a very serious conversation, correct?
Yes.
You were looking to help them, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And you told them something that she never really said, correct?
I told them something that I interpreted that she communicated.
Okay, but so it's clear. She never said she was going to testify in a proceeding. Those words, testify in a proceeding. Correct?
I don't remember those being her exact words.
But even though this was a very...
The implication was that, but she didn't use those exact words that I remember. Remember, this is 50 years ago.
Well, not when you spoke to the police, it wasn't. It was only
I'm
2 years.
remembering now.
Okay. But the answer to the question that I asked you is, you told the police something that you attributed to her that she never said, correct?
She did not say those exact words that I remember.
Now, she told you she was in dire straits. Those are words that you used, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that she was in a crisis, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah, you
Yes,
say not.
yes.
And you responded by sending her some coffee, correct?
And money.
And food.
Uh-huh.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, she said she was going to blow the top off of something. That's what you told us earlier today, correct?
She was going to blow something wide open.
And so if it was going to be blown wide open, that would mean that everybody would know about it, right?
That's
I don't know.
Please answer.
Would you ask the question again?
Sure. She told you she was going to blow it open, wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So that means,
Yes.
in your mind, she was telling you that it was going to be something that people would know about, correct?
Yes.
So if you've been her friend at the time for almost 43 years, and it was going to be something that everyone would know about, why didn't you say to her, tell me?
I did.
And she wouldn't.
Right.
Okay. And this is all in the context of her complaining about her financial situation, correct?
Right.
Okay, she was upset with somebody who she thought would give her money, correct?
Yes.
And she had been asking you for money, correct?
Yes.
Did it ever occur to you that perhaps all of this excitement and drama about what she was going to blow sky high may have been something she was just making up in order to get people to give her money?
No.
Well, then why didn't you insist on knowing what her problem was?
I did ask her, I said, Susie, for heaven's sake, what are you talking about? And she said, Robbie, if I told you, I would endanger your life.
Okay. She also told you that somebody else was sending her money, correct? At this time when she was asking you for money?
I don't remember that.
Would $25,000 been a significant amount to Susan Berman in November of 2000, considering that she said she was desperate for money?
Yes, it would have been a significant amount, but I think she was deeply in debt.
Did you ever check
No?
whether she was really in debt?
No, she would tell me the truth.
Well, you would hope so, right?
I know so.
Now, you're a therapist, is that right?
That's right.
You're used to getting people to share their problems with you, correct?
Yes.
What's bothering them, correct?
Yes.
And yet you are unable to use your skills as a therapist to get an answer from Ms. Berman as to what this big mystery was?
I wasn't using my skills as a therapist. I was using my skills within the context of our friendship, which was very deep. And I knew that if she gave me that answer, that it would endanger my life, that there was some reason that she really couldn't tell me.
Let's suppose that she knew someone was already a target of suspicion, even if it was untrue. You certainly agree, don't you, that she could spin a story, being the great writer she was, using that suspicion to get money from you?
No. She was embarrassed to ask me for money. She was very deeply embarrassed, and
Did
she
you
would
ever-
not have done that.
In the 4 interviews you gave with the police, did you ever tell them that she was embarrassed to ask you for the money?
Very likely I did.
You sure?
No, I'm not sure.
Again, I want to be clear on this. The term hush money was not a term that she used, was it?
It was a term I used.
She never said to you that Mr. Durst was the person in New York that was going to send her money, did she?
No.
You testified that she would never let anyone who was a stranger into the house. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Did Susie have an alarm on her house?
I don't know.
You would agree that if someone had surreptitiously gotten into her house, she wouldn't have to let them in order for them to shoot her? Agree with that?
I have no idea.
You may.
You might not care now.
Do it again? Is that,
Answer me?
I'd like the question again,
Yeah.
please.
Someone could have been inside of Susan's house without having been let in by her, correct?
It's not likely because she locked everything mightily. She was very nervous about having anyone come in.
Okay, but if you're capable of shooting somebody in the back of the head, you might be capable of getting into the house without even one that's well locked.
Your Honor,
No.
At no time did Susan Berman ever actually tell you the secret info that was going to blow things wide open, did she?
That's right.
Before your interviews with the police, beginning in 2015, you read accounts of issues about Mr. Durst on the internet?
Not much.
Some?
I don't remember doing that. I find it all aversive and ugly. And didn't like it.
I understand that, but the question is, did you spend some time reading information about Mr. Durst before your police interviews?
No.
So if you told that to the police or Mr. Lewin that you actually had, would that be inaccurate?
I might have seen something in the paper or on the news. I didn't research it. I didn't go about looking for articles on Mr. Durst.
Remember Mr. Lewin instructing you that it would be advisable not to read material about this?
Yes. Well, yeah.
But you certainly had seen the Jinx at least before several of the interviews, correct?
I think I saw it before the last interview, but I don't think I saw it along the way. I saw it, yeah, late in the game.
Now, you were interviewed in March of 2001. Do you remember that?
Not very well.
But you agree that you were?
Yes?
Okay. And that would have been several months after Susan's death, correct?
Yes.
By the way, before I forget, did you ever visit her at the Benedict Canyon home?
No.
So you don't really know from personal knowledge what kind of locks were on the window, what kind of locks were on the door, things like that, correct?
No. Yes, I do not know.
So Susan is murdered in December, correct?
Yes.
Did the police call you as one of her friends of 40 years within a few days after the murder?
I don't know how many days after the murder they called me or somebody called me, but they definitely had my name on her phone records. I talked to her on about the 22nd or the 21st or 20th, and they were concerned that about talking to me because they found my name here.
And they came to see you in Portland in March of 2001. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And during that interview, do you remember telling them that you had known her since she was 12 years old?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you met while you were in school,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And did you remember telling them the recent conversations you had with her revolved around their days at St. Helens Hall? Remember that?
Yeah.
You remember telling them that Miss Berman was writing a book entitled Rich Girl, Poor Girl, and was gathering information regarding her days at school?
Yes.
And you remember telling them that you were a practicing psychologist, and you stated that Susan believed that she would never be able to completely open up to her past pain and losses regarding her parents' death. Do you remember telling that to the police?
Yes.
And you remember telling them that she was concerned with a husband's suicide and the hell she went through with the relationship with Paul Kaufman and her current financial status.
Yes.
Okay. Morse stated that you know Berman had been broke for a long period of time. Remember that?
Yes.
And Morse estimates that she had sent Berman approximately $1,000 over the last year. Remember that?
Yes. Yes.
You also stated that Berman always had some sort of pending deal and always felt that a big payday was just around the corner.
Yes.
You remember saying that you conversed about her recent falling out with Mella, who was her kind of adopted daughter, and that she was devastated by it. Remember that?
Yes.
Remember telling the police that Berman said Mella hated her and resented her for stepping into the place of her birth mother?
Yes.
Okay. Remember telling the police that Berman often discussed Paul Kaufman and felt that Kaufman had sexually abused Mella when she was younger? Remember that?
Yes.
Remember telling the police that Berman often confronted Paul Kaufman about this and was afraid of him because he was aware that she knew this information about him?
I don't recollect saying that, but I believe that if I said it at that time, it would have been true.
Do you remember telling the police that Berman felt because of this incestuous relationship, Mella had some psychiatric problems, and asked Morse if she would help Mella out? Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Remember telling the police that Berman was in love with a guy named Niall, who was her agent?
Yes.
And you remember telling that Berman wanted to talk about him all the time?
Yes.
Berman had informed her that although Niall had told her he was gay, Berman felt he was really bisexual because of their chemistry together.
Yes.
You kind of tried to tell her that that was kind of a silly notion, didn't you?
I discouraged her from the relationship.
Remember warning her that being involved with someone could cause her to be perhaps, what's the word, exposed to sexually transmitted diseases.
Yes.
And you told that to the police because you were worried about it.
Yeah.
So all these things you're telling the police were things that were bothering her that she had talked to you about just before she was murdered, right?
No.
Well, you told that to the police. That these are
She
things...
talked about them long before she was murdered.
Okay. But these were important issues that you shared with the police.
Not on that last, I had not talked with her about those things in that last conversation or in the previous year or so before then. It was earlier that I talked to her about those things as they were happening.
You understood that the police were there to investigate her homicide, correct?
Yeah.
And you were trying to share with them things about her life to help them in their investigation, correct?
I answered their questions.
Yes. These were questions they asked because as policemen, that was their job, and you gave truthful answers to their questions.
That's right, but it was not within the last year or so that I was talking about at that point.
Okay, that's fine. But you shared that information.
Yes.
Correct? So that was even farther removed from the time you were being interviewed. Correct? Like a year out. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, many years ago.
Okay.
I mean, Paul Kaufman and Niles and all of those people were historical.
Okay. Morse stated that Berman had told her that someone who was high profile had recently sent her $15,000. Remember telling them that?
I don't remember the amount.
Do you remember it was a large amount?
I don't remember the amount. I just remember that she said that someone, she liked to talk about how connected she was and that someone had sent her some help.
Okay. Would it help you to refresh your recollection, you believe, if you were to look at the police report?
No, I believe that if I said it, it was true at that time, but I don't remember 15 years later.
Okay, but I'm asking you, do you think it would help you if you looked at the police report from 15 years ago to refresh your recollection as to what you told the police?
Yes.
May I approach her?
You may.
Gentlemen, I'm showing her the police report of Coulter and Stevens dated March 20th, 2001 on the second page.
No problem.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection?
A little bit.
Does the amount of $15,000 that you told the police refresh your recollection?
Sure.
Thank you. Do you remember telling the police during this interview that Berman had told you that she had recently been sent $15,000?
To tell you that I remember that conversation, would be a lie, but I do believe that if I said it, and I did, that happened.
Do you remember telling the police that Berman had told you the landlady was nuts and neurotic?
Yes.
Okay. That the landlady wanted her out, but Berman was determined to stay?
Yes.
Do you remember telling the police the following? Berman was very paranoid about being killed and always was on the lookout for something.
Yes.
I'm going to ask to approach again, Your Honor, and ask Ms. Berman to look at the whole report because I have a question. Well, I'll do it this way. Ms. Berman.
I'm
sorry, Ms. Morse, I'm sorry. Ms. Morse, at any time in March of 2001, when the two police officers who came to investigate the homicide of your friend of many, many years, did you ever tell them anything about Susan Berman blowing the lid off a story?
I don't remember that now, but if I had said that then, I wouldn't have lied.
Okay, but do you have a recollection of ever telling the police in 2001 about your friend telling you that she was about to blow the lid off a story? Did you tell that to the police?
She referred to this case to this situation several times. And she was obviously sitting on something that she was worried about.
You need to listen to my question. Did you ever tell that to Detective Coulter and Detective Stevens in 2001, 3 months after the homicide?
If it's in that report, I did.
And if it's not in that report, you didn't?
If it's not in that report, the fact is I don't remember it right this minute.
Your Honor, I just offer this as Chesnoff to fulfill. We are willing to stipulate, if it helps Mr. Chesnoff, if he wants stipulation, that this information was not mentioned to Detective Coulter during that interview. If you would like that stipulation, we'll save time for more than happy to stipulate.
Thank you. We'll accept.
Does the court accept this?
Yes, accept the stipulation.
Will you stipulate that at no time during this interview did she ever talk about some person in New York who had a missing wife?
I think that's, is not, yeah, so here's what we'll stipulate, that the statement, the information about the missing wife in New York was not mentioned by the witness during her 2001 interview with Detective Coulter.
So
we will stipulate.
Accept the stipulation. Let me ask one colleagues. And is the blowing the lid off thing included in the stipulation?
Yes, because she did not mention anything. Let me get the stipulation so we're clear. We are willing to stipulate that during that 2001 interview, the witness did not mention the situations with the friend from New York and the missing wife. And implicit in that she also did not mention that situation, did not mention the blowing the lid off the situation in the case.
And that she never told the police Susan Berman told her any of those things. She never told the police that Susan Berman said any of those things to her.
During the interview,
I mean, I think I just
you did
stipulated to what you wanted.
Right, and he just kind of doubled it up a little bit, re-emphasizing the point with this.
But my stipulation covers, correct, Your Honor? The important is
yeah, except that exact word would blow something up.
Okay. Just so I don't remember that after court, the correct words are blow something, what is it?
Blow something wide open.
Blow something wide open. She never told that to the police.
Yes, she never mentioned blowing the case wide open, blowing the situation wide open. She did not mention that incident involving information she had about Mr. Bailey wants me to add no more anything about stealing the beans or any other vegetables. I think my stipulation covers it, Your Honor. I can't. So it's like I stipulate and then they go back and say.
We're good with it, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and have you completed your examination? You have redirect, but we're going to take a break for our report. So we'll resume at 3:45. All right, we're back in session. Versus President Counsel before represented. Witnesses resume the witness stand. You remain under oath. Can you resume your examination now? Begin your redirect.
Thank you. Ms. Morse, when you were being questioned by Detective Goldberg, did you believe it was your role to volunteer things to say, or did you view your role as to answer the questions he was asking?
To ask a question.
At the time that you interviewed with Detective Goldberg, had you already put together in your mind what you would testify about the connection potentially between Susan's friend who had the missing wife and her murder?
No.
Ma'am, you also indicated before that Susan told you that she didn't want to tell you because she didn't want to put the life in you. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You also previously stated another reason why you believe that Susan did not tell you the information that she had.
Yes.
And what reason is that?
Her loyalty to her friend.
Have you at any point in time said that Susan knew that because of the kind of person she knew you were, that if she had told you, she would have known that you would have forced her to come forward?
She didn't say that, but I think she knew that.
No, so this is what I'm asking. Because understand, Susan did not tell you, I'm not going to tell you this because you'll make me come forward whenever I tell you. She never said that, correct?
No.
Is that correct?
She never said it.
Yeah. Did Susan, are you the kind of person, ma'am, that if you were aware of criminal conduct, serious criminal conduct, that you would come forward to the police?
Yes.
How well does Susan Berman know you?
Very well. I regret to this day that I didn't push her.
Now, in terms of people you've been close to in your life over a long period of years, outside of family, where does Susan Berman fit into that equation?
She's in my top 3 or 4 friends.
And you've been a psychotherapist for how long?
40 years.
And as a part of being a psychotherapist, is it you listening to people and figuring out why it is that people do and say and act certain ways?
Yes.
And is it trying to help individuals that you are counseling understand these things?
Yes.
Now, so let me ask you, was Susan Berman, did she express to you during the 40 years you knew her, did she have a sense of pride in her family's mafia?
Yes.
Did you have a similar mafia connection in your family?
No.
Between the two of you, ma'am, the way you lived your lives, was one of you more of a rule follower and a little straighter than the other?
Yes.
Who would that be?
Me.
Was Susie aware of the fact that you were the straight rule follower?
Yes.
And were there other contexts in your 40-year relationship? And I'm not asking what they were. Were there other contexts during that time where the fact that you were a rule follower and Susie was less so came up?
Yes.
Now, I want you to assume for a moment that Susie Berman had come to you and she had said that Bob Durst told me that he killed and or was responsible for the disappearance of his wife. I want you to assume that. Do you have a strong opinion as to how you would have responded to Susie providing you that
I
information?
have a very strong opinion.
And what is it now?
I would have told her that she had to that that's part of why she's so nervous, and that it was bad for her and really morally wrong, and we need to talk about it and get it straightened out right away. She needs to talk.
And given the closeness of the relationship you have with Susan Berman, how confident are you as to whether or not Susie would have known in advance that that would have been your response?
She would have known. She would have expected that that's what I would have done.
And now, if I were to ask you, how certain are you of this opinion you just given?
100%.
Now, in testifying today during cross-examination, Mr. Chesnoff brought up when it was that you related certain facts. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And he asked you why it was that you did not relate certain facts in 2001 when you were questioned. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Ma'am, have you been honest in your testimony today?
Yes.
In your testimony and in your statements that you've given to detectives and myself in this case, how much of an effort have you made to be as truthful and accurate as you possibly?
100%. I mean, I've tried very hard to be truthful.
Your Honor, we've completed testimony of Robert Morse. I'd like to mark for identification, People 79B. That's a
Yes.
two-page document. It's an exhibit sheet. It details which exhibits in the video are now the new exhibits for trial. There were 5 exhibits put in the video. They're all two-page transcripts. I'd like to mark for identification, People 79C. That was 55A. 79D. That was 56A. 79E. That was 57A. 79F, that was 58A, and 79G, that was 59A.
All right, thank you. This, I understand that the next video will be ready, you're ready to present that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock?
We'll have live witnesses here at 9 a.m. now.
Ah, very good. So live witnesses at 9 o'clock, so we can break today at this time. So remember, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. No tweeting or Facebook or any social media regarding the case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.